Rising up to the next level in your business has many challenges, including making more consistent sales and building out your marketing strategy.
So in this episode, we're going to be talking about the next stage of the Lifestyle Builders GPS, which is your accelerator.
Are you frustrated by a lack of momentum in your business? Tired of putting in long hours doing what everyone says you should and still not making money? Sounds like you're ready for Lifestyle Builders. We'll help you get back on track, taking action, and seeing results. Head over to joinlifestylebuilders.com today to get started. Woo! I like to drive fast, so the accelerator makes me excited.
You're definitely a lead foot.
I'm not that bad. I've only had one speeding ticket in the last, 10 years?
And it was on Christmas Day.
No, that was not. I'm talking about the one that I drove home from the store and got a speeding ticket because I was totally not paying attention how fast I was going.
See, you are a lead foot.
That's why, because I didn't use Coast. That was what it was.
Whatever we need to use for an excuse.
Dang
it. So if you guys have not listened to the previous episodes, we are walking through the different stages of the Lifestyle Builders GPS, which is essentially the different steps that you're going to go through as you build your business really in support of your ideal life. And so we've previously talked about the foundations and the incubator, and today we're going to be talking about the accelerator.
Woo woo.
So as we dive into this, what you're going to be hearing is basically the problem that you'll face at this stage of your journey. And then we'll be talking through all the details of what this stage looks like and then what you need to do to essentially graduate from this stage and move on to the next one.
All right. So in the incubator, we talked about basically making your first sales, whether it's a new business or just a new product or service offering in your current business. The problem is once you've made those sales, you then need to figure out how to make them consistently. And this is one of the biggest struggles that so many business owners have, is like that up, down, constant roller coaster of I made some sales and then I didn't make any sales. And I made some sales and then I didn't make any sales. And no one really wants to live that way.
Yeah. And I mean, what tends to happen here is the focus during the incubator is really on making your initial set of sales. So what we recommend you're working on is really finding people that are the closest to making a sale and selling them. Mm-hmm. What you don't want to be focused on is people that are the furthest away or the coldest, because what you need to do is essentially what we want to talk about, or what we want to think about, is the path to purchase and how many steps somebody has to go through before they purchase. So when you're initially getting started and you're targeting your early adopters, you want to find people that are closest to a purchase and make a sale. Mm-hmm. What this does is it proves out that you're starting to make money. It proves that your sales process works, and it gets you kind of going with that validation.
Yeah. You'll often hear this referred to as hot, warm, cold. So you have people that are closest to you and in your direct circle are your hot leads or your hot audience members.
Yeah.
And then the next people out are warm, and then the furthest people out are cold. So a lot of people use like that bullseye analogy where like you want that red core center when you're in the incubator stage. And then now you're moving out to the orange ring and then even the yellow ring around the outer edges.
Yep. But the mistake a lot of people make is that they try to focus on all three at the same time. Mm-hmm. Or even worse, they'll start at the outer ring because in order to get a sale, you got to move people through each of those phases. And if you're starting at the outer ring, one, that's the furthest path away from making a purchase. Two, you've then got to get the messaging and all the systems and everything set up to make a sale, which is difficult. So in the incubator, we focus just on the hot people. And now with the accelerator, what you want to be doing is, like you said, focusing on building out the messaging, the systems, and overall marketing for the warm and the cold people, and starting to not only pull new people in, new leads in, but then also nurture them through the process so that they're ready to then make a purchase.
All right. So let's talk about one of the other problems is once you've started building this out, because we spend such little time in marketing in the incubator stage, often you get to this point where you don't really have enough of a marketing strategy, which then makes that inconsistency in your business. So what we really want here is to make the consistent sales with the building out of your long-term marketing strategy. So what does this customer journey look like? Not just the short path, but the medium path and the long path.
Absolutely. So just talking through like who this stage is for and if you're in it. Obviously, if you're facing those problems where you've done an initial launch and now you're not sure where your next set of sales are going to come from, this is likely for you. Just a reminder for the incubator, what we're looking at is, a ballpark of you want to be making about $5,000 a month. Or overall, you want to be making around like $50,000. Once again, that can be more or less depending on your business model, your industry. But the key thing is that you've made enough initial sales and have some initial success. And now you want to build upon that and bring more customers in with setting up these marketing and sales systems. Okay. So what you can expect in this stage. So you're first off going to be focusing on, like we said, building out more of your marketing and sales. And specifically what we focus on here is what we call your medium path and your long path.
Yep.
So your short
more
path,
of that customer journey.
Yep. So your short path is, like you said, focused on those hot customers. Your medium path is then the step before people then buy. So if you think about it, your sales process is now working. It probably has some optimization that you can make to it. But now what we want to think about is, before I sell to somebody, what do they need on their customer journey in order to then be ready to buy? So in this medium path, a lot of what we're going to be doing is nurturing. We're going to be answering questions. We're going to be overcoming objections and helping people to see that this is, one, something that they want to solve, and then two, your solution is a good solution for that.
Yeah. And I think, you talked about not trying to do all of these at the same time. So you don't want to be trying to build out the short path, the medium path, and the long path all at the same time. But in the accelerator, you are going to work on that medium path first, but you're also going to start working on the long path a little bit as well. Because ultimately in your marketing strategy, you want to make sure long term that you're aware at least of what the long path looks like. Who are those people that are kind of falling into your cold audience, and how do you start to get them into the warm audience in that medium path? So you're going to make sure you're building out the medium path all the way, and then you're going to kind of explore a little bit into the long path so that as you build out your marketing strategy, everything flows well and makes sense for you.
Yeah, and as we'll get into a little bit later in the episode, so by starting from your hot customers in your short path to the medium path, what that will allow you to do is to focus on getting the right messaging, the right types of marketing in place, and then really focusing on the right technology. Because as you start building out some of your marketing and sales systems, there's a lot of really good tools out there that will make this easier for you.
And making sure you know where they are too.
Exactly.
Because, those hot people that you already have kind of pulled into your circle and maybe talked to them during market research and sold them already, they were a little easier to find because they were the closest to you. As you start to build it out, you want to make sure that you are spending your time in the places where you're finding the most of your warm audience members.
Yeah, well, and part of this too is that when you initially sold your product or service, there were a handful of people that bought, but there were also a handful of people that didn't.
Don't forget about them.
Now as you're building out this medium path, a lot of what you're doing is going back to those people and saying, well, why didn't they buy, and what do they need in order to continue on their journey? So this is where in a lot of cases you'll end up creating supporting content. So these might be things like webinars, like informational products that help people better understand their problem and the next step.
It could be having your email list and starting to email people on a consistent basis to nurture them along that medium path.
Correct. So really the focus of that medium path is people that are aware of their problem and seeking a solution and trying to figure out, do I want to solve this problem? If so, what's the best options for me? What you want to be doing is supporting them along that journey, helping them to take that next step and overcome those objections so that when they say, yes, I do want to solve this problem, you're positioned as the company that is best set up to do that.
Another fun part of the accelerator stage is diving a little bit into your company's systems and processes. You're not going to do a deep dive here. You're not overhauling the whole thing. But part of setting that marketing strategy up is to look at what what's the path you want people to take, and how can you set up systems and processes within your business so that it's not constantly you having to bring those people down the path as an individual. You want to have things put in place that those people can move along the path on their own, therefore freeing you up to do the selling and to do the fulfillment of, getting those people whatever it was that they purchased.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because one of the things that you, like we've talked in the past, you want to avoid complexity as much as you can. And a big way to avoid complexity is to only focus on one thing at a time, and then make sure that you're having consistency in how things work.
Yep.
Because what this will also then allow you to do is to be able to track what's called KPIs, or key performance indicators, which is a fancy term just for saying tracking a couple of the key metrics to understand how your business is doing. So as you're building out each of these paths, what you should be able to do is say, find a couple of key things that will help you understand, how is this path working, and are customers able to move through this path, or are they getting stuck? So for example, your long path is really where you're trying to find new people that have the problem and bring them into your world.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be, for example, a way to measure this is people that visit your website. So part of this accelerator phase is typically building out a website or something like that to support customers and a place for them to go. So you might be able to then measure how many people come to my website, and once they come, what's the next step that I want them to take? If you're building an email list, your next step for them to take might be opting in, giving you their name and email in exchange for some free information or a free video or something like that. So now what you can measure is, first, how many people came to my website? And then the next step that I wanted them to take was to opt in. How many people did that? And you should be able to track each step of your marketing and sales process. So then as you're testing out these different strategies, you can say, hey, my assumption is if we go and do this marketing, that we'll be able to increase how many people come to our website.
Yeah.
Then by tracking that, you can see, does that actually work out? If not, then we got to try a different marketing strategy or do something else.
Yeah. And of those people that joined signed up for your opt-in and joined your email list, how many of them are opening your emails and clicking on links and moving themselves closer to your hot audience and closer to purchasing? Because ultimately, you don't want to be doing things that are bringing people into your business, but isn't getting them any closer to purchasing your product or service offering.
Yeah, and that's another struggle that we see often at this stage, is when people haven't built out that medium path and prove that they can take customers that are warm and turn them into hot. What they end up doing is they then go out and try to bring a whole bunch of new cold leads in,
Mm-hmm.
but they haven't then been able to take those cold leads and move them to warm, and warm move them to hot. So they'll build, for example, an email list. Like all these people say you need to build an email list, but if you're building an email list and you're not able to move them to the next step closer to purchase, you're actually wasting your time, money, and energy,
Mm-hmm.
because you're not moving them and getting them the result, which is them able to buy and you able to help solve their problem.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We're going to move into the numbers portion.
Yeah. You numbers geek?
No, I'm not a numbers geek. I'll let you do the time numbers this time. And we don't really have to do a ton around the financial numbers, because it's the same breakdown for Profit First as it was for the incubator. So we'll run through that one quickly.
Yep. So essentially, if you haven't listened to the previous episodes, in each stage of business, we want to give you some guidelines for where your time should be spent. So in this case, you're always going to find you want to spend some time on strategy. So we say about 10%. And that's going to be true really throughout.
Mm-hmm.
Then really what you want to be doing is shifting some of your time. In the previous phase in the incubator, we were spending a lot of time in operations and sales. So what we want to do now is shift some of our time away from operations now that we've built our product or service and have been able to deliver it. And we want to shift that really into more marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So your breakdown is going to be somewhat like, a third marketing, a third sales, a third operations. Maybe a little bit heavier on your marketing and sales because you're trying to build those processes out. And then you're leaving your final 10% for like administrative stuff in your business.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit of time for finance. So in the previous episode, we introduced Profit First. In this case, you should be managing your cash flow with
Mm-hmm.
something like Profit First, and then just starting to look at your numbers monthly. So your profit and loss statement, your balance sheet, that type of thing.
Or have an accountant that is going to help you understand what those reports mean. If you're not a numbers person, be familiar with those reports, but make sure that when you hire somebody as an accountant, that they're going to be somebody who's going to help you understand what is going on in your business based on what those reports are saying.
Absolutely. And really the key thing here, and why, like, in part of the way that we help businesses grow is we step you into this. So in the incubator, you're really just managing your cash flow. But as you start growing your business and making more sales, what you want to be doing is really making sure that you're now better understanding monthly, how are we doing? Like, how much are we spending in different areas of our business? And do we have the right margins in place to be able to grow as we start selling more? Because if your numbers are off and you're making more sales and marketing, but you're losing more money each time you do that, that's not a good thing, and it's going to prevent you from scaling. Yeah. So even though this is maybe scary to look at the numbers, what you're going to find is that really tracking your business is critical at this point. And that goes from the scorecard that we talked about, where you're able to track, your marketing, your sales, but it also then goes into your finances, where you're then able to track how are we doing financially with the business.
Yeah. So quick recap on Profit First. It's basically a guideline based on how much money your business is making that tells you which buckets to put what amount of money in to hold aside. So if you want to listen in, we did do an entire show around Profit First, which was show 97. But basically he tells you, here's what you should be looking at to put aside for profit. Here's what you should be taking yourself as a salary. Here's what you should probably put aside for taxes. And here's what you should put aside for expenses in your business. So basically giving you a really good baseline and a guideline as to how to bucket up and separate out your money to make sure that you are accounting for all the things that you're either going to need to pay for, or to make sure that you're paying yourself enough.
Absolutely. And so what are those buckets, just as a quick recap?
Those buckets, as a quick recap, are 5% for profit.
Hey, you said profit first.
You're going to say that. 50% for salary, 15% aside for taxes, which he will say based on your state, this may be higher or lower. So really talk to somebody in your state who understands the taxes. And then 30% for your operating expenses.
Mm-hmm. And, what we find is that this is a really good, not only process for managing your cash, but also helping you to then figure out, as I make more sales, then I can have more money available to spend to grow my business. Yeah. So in a lot of cases, what people end up doing is they spend a lot of money on like marketing and sales, but they're not yet making enough sales to be able to justify that. So that 30% that you have for your operating expenses, the more that you sell by building out your marketing and sales processes, the more money you're then going to be able to have to reinvest back into business to grow that. Mm-hmm. And this is a stage where, in the incubator, you were basically doing a lot of organic marketing. You wanted to keep your budget down because you weren't making a lot of money yet. But in this stage, in the accelerator, now you're going to look to also add in some paid marketing. So depending on your business, your industry, that might look a little different. Mm-hmm. You might do some offline advertising. You might do some online advertising. You might be on different platforms, but the more sales that you start making, and especially when you know your numbers, then the more you can start taking that operating expenses and put it back into sales and marketing to continue to grow the business.
Yep. And your team for this stage of business, obviously in the incubator, we talked about it was probably just you, maybe a VA, if you were bringing enough money to be able to afford that. But for this stage, you're definitely going to still have you, obviously. Yep. You're still going to have that VA. You might even have a couple different types of VAs. And then you're probably also going to have a project manager or an OBM, which is an online business manager. So somebody who is helping you make sure that these processes and systems that you're starting to set up are flowing, and you're delegating some of those tasks off to somebody who's capable of handling them.
Yeah, and so just diving a little bit deeper into this. So when you start your business, you're wearing all the hats.
Yep.
And one of your goals as your business grows is to start getting some of those hats or some of those tasks off of your plate. And so we started doing some of that with a VA. And in this case, you're likely not at the point where you can hire a full-time project manager, also sometimes known as an integrator, mm-hmm. online business manager, COO. Basically, what you're trying to do is hire somebody else to help you run the day-to-day of the business. so that you can focus more on the strategic, the big picture, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So in this phase, you're not going to necessarily be able to hire somebody full time, but the goal is to either, if it makes sense, take one of your VAs and put them more into this role, or to your point, find somebody else that can maybe come on as a part-time basis to help you manage, organize, and execute some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to finance, we talked about, needing to have an accountant. Some people in the incubator stage even will obviously have an accountant. But at this point, you might even break it out into having an accountant and a bookkeeper, because you're going to want to delegate some of those financial tasks off that you don't necessarily need to do, such as when you're following profit first, moving money from bank account to bank account, or, taking your metrics with all of the numbers that you have in sales and coming out with different reports and things like that. So you may have two different types of people for the finance at this point, which can be helpful for you as you're doing the strategy piece of the business.
Absolutely. The other thing at this point is oftentimes you'll end up hiring different contractors or different companies based on need.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas later on in your business, you'll hire people in, part-time, full-time, and they'll really be part of your business. Oftentimes at this point, you're going to be hiring people or companies for specific tasks.
Yep.
So if there's something that you're not an expert at, or it doesn't make sense for you to necessarily learn, this is where you might hire somebody. So for example,
building out a sales page.
Yeah, you might build your website the first time, or you might say, that's not really a good use of my time. I'd rather take some of my marketing budget and have somebody build that. Or, for example, you might not be the greatest copywriter. So you might be able to take some of what you've come up with
Mm-hmm.
and pay somebody to help create some of that copy for your sales pages or your emails or any of that stuff.
Yep.
So realize that based on your business and what your needs are, that might change. When we look at like our coaching business compared to our wine and liquor store, we ended up hiring a couple more staff at this point because we wanted to remove ourselves from the business. So we have several like cashiers.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on your business model and your needs, you might have some different team members, but this is where you really want to start having people that can more do the day-to-day work so that you can start removing yourself. Now, at this level of business, you're not going to have the funds to hire everybody,
No.
but you want to get that process started, which you'll expand on later as your marketing and sales increase.
Yes, and it kind of brings us right into the tools and tech piece. Same sort of thing here. You may start upgrading from some of those free services to maybe the paid version of those services. You might even upgrade to the next level service that provides what you need. You're going to probably have, like Tom mentioned, a website at this point. You may have an email marketing service. You might have some tools that you use with your social media marketing, like schedulers, or somebody who's making the graphics for your social media posts, some things like that. So still, again, we want to keep it simple where we can, but you're going to obviously need to start upgrading some of that stuff so that you can provide a better experience for your customers moving through the journey, and a better experience for the people that are working within your business with you to be more efficient.
Yeah, and I mean, we just talked about your team, and starting to hire your team is important. But one of the things we always talk to business owners about is that you want to actually automate things before you delegate them. Because as great as it is to hire a team and have a team supporting you, it can also be a challenge because you've got to spend time really understanding, who your company is, some of your core values, some of the right culture that you want to have. We're not going to go heavy into this at this stage, but when you start hiring people, you want to make sure you hire people that are first a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got to be able to manage, you've got to be able to do a whole bunch of things. So what we often recommend is, with that budget that you have to be able to spend on operating expenses, in a lot of cases, you can use tools to help take things off of your plate and not have to spend as much money on hiring a person to do it. And it's easier because oftentimes you can tell a tool what to do once and it'll keep doing that.
Well, and it's also a better bang for your buck because you want to keep the people, the real people that you're hiring, for the most important tasks that need a person behind them. So you don't want your OBM, your online business manager, to be doing tedious things that could easily be automated with a tool or a piece of software. So it's really obviously, like Tom said, automate whatever you can before you delegate, because then whatever tasks are left over or whatever tasks are still on your plate are hopefully things that you can train your VA or your OBM on how to do, and they fit in the culture of your company so that you're free to walk away and do some of those other essential tasks that only you can do.
Absolutely. And so we did a whole show on this. It's called Automate Before You Delegate.
Of course it is.
So if you guys want to check that out, you can go to tomandryan.com/109.
All right. And again, we come to the last, but probably most important piece of this stage, which is the mindset you're going to need for success here.
Yeah. And so a lot of times at this point, the struggle really comes back into sales and then eventually marketing. And a lot of what can happen is that people think, well, those first set of sales, they might have just been a fluke. Maybe I don't really know what I was doing and I got lucky. And often this will come because those first set of sales, as we talked about, were hot. And now because we haven't built out the marketing and sales systems to warm people up, it may be more of a struggle, or you may not be able to get those next set of sales.
Yep.
And so the whole point of this part is to realize that, some of these thoughts could come up. And as you're building out your marketing and sales, you might feel like, selling isn't your natural thing, or that this is like
slimy, or maybe the first sales you made were just a fluke. Yeah, it's never going to happen again.
So what you then want to be doing is really understanding and going deeper into your customer and thinking about, well, what do they need on the steps before they become a customer, and building out your systems that way, and realizing that a lot of marketing and sales really comes down to testing. Mm-hmm. And so what that means is that you're not going to have this all right. You're going to have to test different things out. And part of that scorecard that we talked about earlier, where you're measuring things, is because you want to constantly be measuring and saying, okay, if I advertise on this platform or doing this thing, does it move the right number that I was expecting? If I advertise on Facebook, for example, and my goal is to get more opt-ins, is that actually working? Mm-hmm. Because without understanding that, we can't make tweaks and optimize, which is really so much of what marketing and sales are.
Yeah. And I mean, this is one of those stages where you're going to have to get really comfortable being uncomfortable, mm-hmm. because there's going to be a lot of changes that you have to make from the way that you were doing things to the way that you need to do things moving forward in order to be successful. And I know, I guess I can't really call myself a recovering control freak because I've gotten a lot better. So I'm pretty good where I'm at. But it is really hard to hand things off to other people. I struggled with this a lot early on, letting other people do things and feeling like it wouldn't be done correctly, or that this was something that I had to do because my way of doing it, no one else knew. When you're in the accelerator stage, a lot of what you're going to be doing is focusing on those most essential tasks, as we talked about. So get comfortable with using tools and software to automate, even though you feel like, taking yourself out of the equation might be a disservice to your customers. I promise you it's not. It's actually going to make their experience a lot better if you automate in the right places and you still make it a personal experience for them. You're going to feel weird like handing off tasks to somebody, and you're going to go through a little bit more hardship because you have to actually have a process behind the way that you do it to be able to teach someone else how to do it. But once you do, it frees you up to be able to move on to the next stage.
Yeah. And I mean, to your point, you're going to start doing some of this, and it's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, and you don't want to be overwhelming at this point. So you're still going to be doing a lot of it yourself, but you're going to start getting used to taking the manual stuff you're doing and automating with a tool. You're going to start getting used to having a consistent process and being able to have other people take over bits of that. Mm-hmm. And a critical thing at this point is you want to focus on a single path and a single marketing and sales channel. Because one of the challenges that a lot of people will do is they'll say, okay, well, I need to be on all of these social media platforms, mm-hmm. and I need to do advertising in these 10 different places. And a couple things happen when you try to do this. One, you add complexity. Two, it makes it a lot harder to track results because you don't know, hey, was it this advertising strategy or this advertising strategy that brought in new customers? So what you want to be doing is getting one path working and then continuously tweaking and optimizing that path until you're consistently bringing people in, and then you can replicate it. It's just like we talk about with a lot of people. You don't want to initially have 10 different products or 10 different income streams, because all the stuff we're talking about, you need to then replicate across those. So if you're trying to do a whole bunch of different marketing at once, it's going to make things a lot more complicated than they need to be.
Yep.
So focus on one path to purchase, one channel, and work on optimizing that, getting rid of as many bottlenecks as you can so that you can consistently make sales with the simplest process you can have.
All right. So the down low on knowing when you're ready to move on from the accelerator stage.
Yep. So really at this point, you've been able to build out and understand your customer journey, and you've been able to build out your marketing and sales processes so that you can consistently attract new people in and then nurture them through the process so that they're buying and becoming customers. So you should have a steady stream of new potential customers and then new actual customers because they're buying.
Mm-hmm.
Second benchmark that you want to look at is how much you're selling. So once again, this will be a little bit dependent on your business model, but you're really looking at that six-figure mark at this point. So you want to have, about $100,000 in sales. Ideally, you're looking at that in the course of a year or less. You don't want to look at, well, I've been in business 2 years, I've made 100,000, because you're still only at that 50,000 mark. So you want to be making about $100,000 a year minimum, if not more. And what that usually comes down to is about $8,800 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, you can start to say, okay, now I've got consistent sales coming in. And the next problem you're going to start facing is that you're now running out of time because you've got consistent sales coming in. You're able to deliver to those customers and get more results, but you feel like you can't make more sales. Otherwise, you're going to be spending more time in your business. So you feel like you can't scale without spending more of your time, which is then a great indication that you're going to move on to what we're going to talk about next week, which is the scaler phase.
Ta-da! No, 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
We got a little surprise in between there. All right. So actions for this week.
Okay, so if you guys are at this stage, I want to invite you to jump on a call with me, talk about where your business is at, and then come up with a strategy for then what you do next. Because this is one of the things we found that a lot of people get really confused and end up going off track at this stage. They do a really good job launching their product, and then they have so many shiny objects. There's so many things they think they should do. So I want to invite you guys to jump on a call with me. We'll talk through where you're at and we'll come up with what your next steps are and what that plan is and then how we can support you with that. So if you guys are interested in that, you can go to tomandariana.com/apply. You'll fill out a very quick application and then we'll be able to chat and help you on the next step of your journey.
I'm going to leave it at one action because that's a really important action.
There you go.
I don't have one for you, so do Tom's action.
And if you guys have not pre-ordered the book yet, Lifestyle Builders, we actually have a section in the book called Set Up and Scale Your Systems. And a lot of what we talk about in there is the same stuff we talk about here, which is helping you to get these different pieces of your business set up as you then start to increase those sales, build your business out, and start to scale that up.
With a really cool analogy, of course.
Absolutely.
Courtesy of Tom.
Because I love analogies. So if you guys are interested in learning more about the book and pre-ordering your copy with some really cool bonuses, you can go to lifestylebuildersbook.com.
Woo, woo. All right. It's been another great episode with Tom and Ariana, your hosts and lifestyle builders.
And as always, I want you guys to remember that it's your life, your business, your way. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Hey, we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you know another entrepreneur who may benefit from hearing this show, we would so appreciate you being a good friend and sharing it with them. Are you dreaming of a life of financial freedom and more time to spend with your loved ones? Want to build your business to support that dream? You need Lifestyle Builders, a mentorship program designed to meet you where you are and give you strategic and custom guidance so you can build the business you need for the life you crave. Become a lifestyle builder at joinlifestylebuilders.com. Are you a Lifestyle Builders podcast fan? We'd love to hear from you. Head on over to tomandariana.com/iTunes and leave us a review.